Ms. Shorter, members of the board, we do have 3 items for board discussion this evening. Our first item are board policies. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Ms. Shorter, and members of the board. Under items for board discussion, letter C, board policy number 1, I have 7 pieces of policy for discussion, letters A through G. In your board packet, I have included a copy of previous language and proposed language as per OSBA. Common theme the last 3 board meetings is coming out of House Bill 33, and we'll continue that again tonight. Letter A and letter B, policies and regulations that are tied together. IGBEA, Reading Skills Assessment Intervention, and IGBEA-R, Reading Skills Assessments and Intervention. These are both revised. We've covered a bit of this previously with House Bill 33. It contains a major change to the mandatory retention requirement in the 3rd grade reading guarantee, allowing students who would otherwise be retained in 3rd grade to be promoted at the parents' request. IGBEA and IGBEA-R have been amended to make clear that provided interventions, so those students who have not met the cut score, will align with the principles of science of reading. So we've talked a little bit about that as well. There's some lawsuits out there about that, but these 2 policies have to be amended to reflect that part. Letter C, policy JEA, compulsory attendance ages. This is another revised. The new law, Ohio Revised Code, provides that students receiving home education are exempt from compulsory attendance provisions. The requirement for a parent to submit a letter requesting excuse for compulsory attendance no longer applies. Parents are still required to submit a notice to the superintendent of the child's district of residence informing the district that they will be providing home education. The law also states that those participating in home education shall not be subject to any rules adopted by the Department of Education and Workforce or its director. Another provision of House Bill 33 requires that the DEW rescind any rules regarding the issuance of excuses from compulsory attendance for purposes of a home education as it previously existed. After the rules are rescinded, the DEW and its director have no authority to prescribe or adopt any additional rules regarding home education. Policy letter D, policy JECE, student withdrawal from school. This is another revised. This is a simple change where we're just adding home education to the policy. Letter E, policy JED-R1, student habitually absent. Existing law allows the board to adopt a resolution authorizing the superintendent to seek to have a student's driving privileges revoked when the superintendent receives information that a student of compulsory school age has been absent without legitimate excuse for more than 60 consecutive hours in a month or 90 hours in a school year. The superintendent must notify in writing the student and their parents and state that the information regarding the student's absences has been provided to the superintendent, and as a result of that information, the student's driving privileges will be submitted to the appropriate judge or registrar of motor vehicles to deny such privileges. This notification must also state that the student and their parents may appear before the superintendent or designee to challenge the information provided to the superintendent. So House Bill 33 modifies this provision to authorize that the hearing conducted by the superintendent or designee to be conducted by electronic means if requested by the parent's guardian or the child's parent, guardian, or custodian. Letter F, policy JEDA, truancy. Revisions were made to allow the district's notice requiring the attendance of truant students, parents, or guardians at a parental education program and the district's notice regarding the legal consequences of truancy to now be delivered by regular mail with a certificate of mailing or other form of delivery with proof of delivery. This includes electronic delivery or electronic proof of delivery. Letter G, policy JEG, exclusions and exemptions from school attendance. This is another simple change where we add home education to the policy. Please let me know if there are any questions with any of these policies.
I have a question.
Okay.
It is about policy JED-R1. It is the student habitually absent. It's the loss of driving privileges. Was that a direct consequence of HB 33, or was this
No, this is
language-
policy that's been here for years. Yeah, the change in this policy is about the authorization. How are we notifying the parents that we're moving forward with this?
Okay.
And we don't do this very often.
Okay, thank you, because I thought that was possibly as a result of the new law.
No, it's again, a lot of these policy changes are just, I struggle with why Columbus is talking about these things. I mean, they got into the weeds about how we notify our parents about this.
Right. It seems that, like, the penalties are stiffer for the student that's actually in public schools, but if you're a homeschool student, they're relaxing so many things that I think are important. I think that it is important to have a curriculum and to be compliant with it in some way. Okay, all right.
Yes, our next item for discussion, preschool staffing update. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Members of the board, I just wanted to make you aware that due to our rising preschool student numbers, that we are going to be adding an additional preschool teacher at East Elementary, along with 2 educational assistants at East Elementary and 2 educational assistants at West Elementary. These staffing additions are mandated by the Office of Exceptional Children, so it's something that we are required to do due to our staff to preschool student ratios. There's no action that's required by the board at this time. I just wanted to make you aware that we are going to be moving forward with filling these state-mandated positions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last item for discussion is the 5-year forecast, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Lane.
Thank you. Mrs. Shorter, members of the board, I have for you tonight the November version of our 5-year forecast. Again, this is a document that's fluid. It's a snapshot as we know it today that's been adjusted to reflect all known activities of the future, along with some certain assumptions and predictions. More detailed information will be available on our website under the 5-year forecast document. There are 3 essential purposes and objectives of the 5-year forecast. The forecast is meant to engage the Board of Education and the community in the long-range planning and discussions of financial issues facing our school district. It also serves as a basis for determining the school district's ability to sign the certification required by Ohio Revised Code Section 5705.412. It's commonly known as the 412 certificate. And it's also to provide a method for the Department of Education and the Auditor of State to identify school districts with potential financial problems. Our revenue breakdown really doesn't change a whole lot from year to year. Over 91% of our revenue comes from 2 sources. Our local property taxes account for about 54% of our revenue, and our state aid or state foundation funding accounts for about 37% of our revenue. Property taxes and values, boy, they have been discussed quite a bit lately. The county auditor has also been holding some town hall meetings, trying to explain the proposed large increase in property values, and the state legislature has tried to come up with different bills to address that large increase in values. But as of today, I don't see any new bills passed, so we are using what has been projected for our district, which is 39% increase for our residential properties and a little over 4% for our commercial and industrial properties. Tax collections are projected to increase about 4% this year, 3% next year, and then for fiscal year 26, less than half of 1% increase. So again, there's been a lot of rumors circulating about tax increases and that our taxes are going to go up 40%. That is just not true. So I want to make sure everybody, our residents, understand that just because values are going up 40% does not mean that the taxes are going up 40%. Our district is one of 2 in the county that are not at the 20 mil floor. So the effective rates that are used to calculate our taxes are rolled back when these values increase. So once, again, I have some statements up there. Once a school levy is passed, the amount of money which our school district receives from those voted levies applied against that tax duplicate, which existed when the issue was first passed, can never increase. So when there's reassessments and updates to the values, inflation has increased the value of the property, a tax credit is applied to make certain the schools receive no more money from those voted mills applied against that property. So the only way that our district receives additional revenue is if there's new construction that comes on the books, or what they call the inside millage or the non-voted millage piece of our millage is 6.79 mils. So it's not a windfall. Everybody thinks it's a windfall. It's not a windfall for our district. As you can see, 4% is what we're projecting the increase to be for this year. So I just want to try to make people understand that we are not one of those districts. So the second piece that I want to explain, and I visited this last month about our Fair School funding plan. Our funding for this has increased because they've updated the base cost inputs at the fiscal year 22 levels, and they've continued to phase that formula in. So that has resulted in increased state funding for us to about 13% for this year. So that's a good thing. Unfortunately, next year, though, we're projecting a decrease of about 2.75% in funding, and that is due to those property values increasing. They're updating the residential incomes, and all that comes into play because the state views that as our district becoming wealthier, which means we lose state funding when that happens. So we may increase a little bit in property tax collections, but then we're decreasing in school funding. Yeah. So overall, our annual projected revenue for fiscal year 24 to 28, as you can see on the graph, is relatively flat for those years. Again, there's a little bit of a decline in 2027, and that is due to the reappraisal that'll be happening with our property values and what we're projecting those to be. Moving on to expenditures, again, same type of graph. It doesn't change a whole lot from year to year. Our district employs over 1,100 has over 1,100 regular employees and serves about 9,500 children. So, of course, the majority of our expenditures are in salaries and benefits. So that's about 78% of our expenditures are tied to those salary and benefit pieces. Speaking of salaries, we have settled with all of our unions, and the Classroom Teachers Association, we reached a 2-year agreement with 2% increases for each year with them. Our OPSI locals also will be receiving a 2-year agreement, 20-cent per hour increase and plus 2% each year. For the remainder of the forecast, 2% raises are projected. For this year, as Mrs. Howard mentioned, preschool is growing, special education is growing in our district, English language learners are growing. So we have to add some staffing to help meet those needs. And as you might remember, we've also tried to reduce some staffing this year, and those positions are listed on the screen. For next year, 24-25, we have 4 integration coaches that we have being paid out of our ESSER funds, which will move, those funds are expiring, so those positions will move to the general fund, along with some more staffing projected to be needed for special ed preschool and English language learners. Fiscal year 26 and 27, we also have added an EL teacher in each of those years, but no additional positions beyond that fiscal year 27. Employee benefits, increases and decreases with employee benefits typically go hand in hand with increases and decreases of salaries. As you might recall, we received a 17.9% increase in our medical premiums last year. Happy to share this year, we're only going to receive a 6% increase effective January 1st. So we are glad about that. So I have lowered our projections for the remaining years of the forecast to possibly 10% increases to our medical premiums. One item I did want to mention is that our plan is constantly looking at ways to save dollars for both districts and employees. They have offered a new medical plan option beginning January 1st, and it has a lower monthly premium for both the employee and the district, and it also saves a lot of out-of-pocket costs for employees. So I'm anxious to see how many people have chosen that new plan and how much money that may save us. Dental is great. We don't receive any increases in dental lately, so that's awesome. So overall, projected annual expenditures, as you can see, are averaging about a little over 4% each year, increasing for the life of the forecast. This graph shows the differences with our revenues, our expenditures, and then our cash balances, that green line, as you see, declining over the next couple of years. financial summary, it's showing that this district has a positive cash balance through June 30th of 2026. But by June of 2027, the district has a negative cash balance. Last year, you may have remembered, we presented the board, the administrative team presented the board with some reductions. We have implemented those. We've saved about $4.3 million over the course of 3 years. Much of that savings has come from our delaying facility projects or upgrades, but we continue to evaluate staffing as positions become open, our programs, our contracts. We're trying to do everything we can to reduce our expenditures, but it is time, I think, for the board to consider addressing that deficit that we believe will occur in 2027. So some next steps, things for the board to consider. The last operating levy that the board that the community passed was back in November of 2011. And that's been over 12 years that levy, we have stretched that levy. Originally, that was going to be a 2 to 3 year levy. We thought we'll be back on the ballot again, but luckily, again, we have stretched that over 12 years. But if the board wishes to consider a possible ballot issue in March of 2024, we have to pass 2 resolutions. And that first resolution would have to be passed by Friday, December 8th. Then that goes to the auditor's office for them to come up with the information we need to pass the second resolution, which must be passed by Wednesday, December 20th. And then I've also listed dates for the November election on that slide. Since the dates are coming up so quickly, I would like to ask the board or make a suggestion that we have more of a discussion when possibly we have more board members available at the end of November, possibly the week of November 27th, and be able to have an open discussion about what the board wishes to do. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions that the board may have.
I guess just one comment. Thank you so much for putting this together. I think it's just important for people to understand that we're a capped district, and I'm not sure if, they understand it, but within that, there are ramifications.
We're actually, we're on the formulas, meaning if we receive more students, yes, we will receive additional monies, but then if we receive additional students and we don't have room for them, where we have to hire additional staffing, then that, again, puts us back in a deficit because the amount of money we receive does not cover the cost of an additional staff member most of the time. So it's come to the point now where we need to address it. We have tried to do all we can, I think, for now, as far as trying to reduce anytime anything comes. The discussion every week, at our administrative team meetings is how can we do this differently or less expensive, and we just feel we don't want to come out and ask the public for additional revenue unless we absolutely need it, and I think it's time that we do that, and I'm not speaking for the board, my recommendation would be that we have further discussions about this.
Makes sense? Yeah. All right.
So I will be in touch with board members to set a date for a possible special meeting.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Lane.
thank you.